bus stop. Been waiting for a minute there, but has it been forever?
Welcome to a Board Ghost episode primer for Home by Dark, a story game by Jason Olsen. So Home by Dark generates stories that are inspired by films and series like E.T., The Goonies, and Stranger Things. So you play hopeful misfits whose lives change when they meet a character with extraordinary abilities. The setup for the game is pretty simple in that you start with a group of 3 to 5 players, and you have 6-sided die of 3 different colors and some counters to note character points, as well as some index cards, sticky notes, pencils, the usual suspects. So the game plays with a setup phase and a couple acts and then a final scene. So kind of similar to Fiasco in that regard. So you've got, when you generate your characters, you first generate a world, like where are you set, what's the setting of this place, what time period, what is the season, that's very important, and what is the city or town that you guys live in, and what are the sort of basic structure of the world. Then you generate your relationships and your characters in this world. And from there, you also generate the sort of pillars of this world. The 3 pillars are the secret. So that's the character or being, the entity that you are trying to hide or protect. So it's your E.T., it's your, the treasure, or to some degree sloth. There could be Eleven or L from Stranger Things. That's what the secret is. Then you also have your adversary, the character who is, or the entity that is trying to root out the secret and the main foil for your characters in the world. And then you also have and that is the pursuer. You also have the danger. So that's sort of the larger threat that maybe it's brought about by the pursuer. Maybe it's something that protecting the secret will, basically the secret will stop the danger if you are successful. That's sort of the goal. So there's a larger danger in the world that is outside of the pursuer and the secret. You also, as a group, generate some assets, like specific objects. They can be a beat-up station wagon, a crowbar, a flashlight, a umbrella, just things that are part of your characters, things that are part of the world, a BB gun, a backpack, things that everyone can make use of, but that are just sort of common and shared by all. And you also have locations, so you can generate places and sort of little descriptions for those places, where they are and what they're about, like the junkyard run by a stern old man, sort of deal. And anyone can tap those. So yeah, that's the basic setup. You set up the secret, the danger, the pursuer, and the setting. Then you generate your characters, and your characters some have hope die, and you basically get 2 die to start with. A hope die, a responsibility die. You can have 2 hope and no responsibility, or 2 responsibility and no hope die. You can have 1 of each, and that basically says sort of like how idealistic your character is over realistic, or realistic over idealistic. And the younger kids with their head in the clouds would have more hope than responsibility. The babysitter might be in the middle, and the adult might have all responsibility. And you also generate insecurities and fears for your characters, and you hand those to the other players. So they kind of will activate those as the story goes on. And you also, for yourself, kind of like, based on the dice you have, indicate when you're going to instill hope or instill a sense of responsibility in other players. So you generate that and kind of almost bet on which characters you think you're going to have to activate that on by writing that on a card to be used in the course of the story. Then you take turns setting up scenes, very, very similar to Fiasco, where you say, this is where I am, this is who is with us, this is the aspect of the game, which pillar I'm going to activate, and you can spend character points, which you start with 1 of, to bring in locations, to bring in scenes, to bring in additional characters besides the initial person you want to be in the scene with. You can really add to your pool, and what that does is later on in the scene, it 1 makes the scene richer, but 2 makes it easier to complete the goal of the scene. You are going to ask a yes or no question, and you want to get a yes. And to get that yes, you're going to have to roll against the difficulty of the game at the time. In Act 1, it's a little easier. Act 2 is a little harder. And the more successful you are, the better your chances of weakening the pursuer or strengthening weakening the pursuer of the danger and strengthening the secret. So that's the basics. And so you play through 2 scenes per character in Act 1, then you roll into Act 2, and you play 2 scenes per character in Act 2, and then you go into your final confrontation. And that's the game. It's very, very simple. The final confrontation is basically taking the accumulated die of the secret, the accumulated character points that you have left, and sort of putting these pools of 6-sided die together and rolling them and letting those die determine sort of how the story rolls out. And then you kind of say like where your characters are at now in the course of the resolution. Like, what does that mean that this is how you've played out the story? What does that actually say about where your characters ended up after this story? So it's a very, very nice sort of take on the GM-less fiasco kind of thing. So that is Home by Dark. You can find it on any number of, you can find it on PDF and in print online, and we'll put links to that in the show notes. Thanks for listening to our Home by Dark primer. I would really recommend picking up the PDF, and rule-wise, it's a variation on some existing games, and it's an interesting take. It very, very much leans you towards a specific sort of style of play where you're going to have the innocence versus, and like sort of idealism versus the responsibility in facing the real world. Like Elliot and E.T. in their world and their aspect of the story is separate from the government agents.
Dying don't agree with me.